Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, Part 16, Chapter 30. Eccentric Donald, or Donald el Tío Raro. Donald was a typical eccentric British guy. Tall, bald, with big ears, and the look of a more handsome and not green Shrek. I knew he was a little eccentric from day one, because actually the day he came to have a look around, it was Christmas. And always at Christmas time, I give my students Spanish liqueurs and turron or some other nice Spanish traditional treat. Turron or polvorones are the Spanish equivalent of Quality Street, roses or matchmakers, things you have at Christmas. Donald appeared as if by magic at coffee time to discuss classes. I was in class at the time and I gave him some ponche, Spanish brandy liqueur, to try. Also a coffee and chocolate as he chatted and watched the class. 30 minutes later, he was still there, showing no signs of moving. Another 30 minutes passed, and another. I was starting to think he would never go home. Anyway, no pasa nada, as eventually he signed up and along he came for the next course. A few things he did during the course proved his eccentricity. He would disappear to the loo with a packet of baby wipes. He would wear earplugs in class to block out other noise of other students talking. He would tell many, many interesting stories that led me to refer to him as an international man of mystery, 003.5. But I will always remember Donald most fondly as the student who gave me the best excuse ever for not attending class. He emailed me one day to say he would not be in the following day for classes as his living room window had been shot by a gun. He had to wait for the glaziers to come to fit bulletproof glass throughout all his house. To prove this had really happened, he sent me a photo of the bullet hole. To this day, no one has ever come up with a better excuse. Chapter 31. Not the other woman this time. No soy la otra esta vez. In my life, I have done things, as I imagine has everyone, that I've regretted. Søren Kierkegaard said that life can only be understood backwards, but that it must be lived forwards. So on we go, doing the best we can, but often totally messing up everything by doing things which seem like a good idea at the time, sometimes hurting other people. I have been guilty of this many times and a victim of it too. However, I believe in karma, accepting responsibility. So I try and forgive and move on from those who have hurt me, and I accept readily the karma that I deserve for anyone that I have hurt. It really annoys me, though, to be wrongly accused without having even enjoyed the pleasure of whatever naughty thing I'm being accused of. So this happened to me once with a student. I'll call him Jacob. Jacob came for classes for quite a long time with no incident. I knew he had a long-term partner, and to be honest, nothing untoward happened or was said for many, many months. Then one weekend, just out of the blue, I received a message from him. So it would be rude not to reply to a student, so I did. It was something banal. I don't really remember now what the original message was. But this started a flurry of messages over the next few weeks, which gradually, on his part, I might add, were becoming more and more risque. This was quite tricky for me, as I was torn between the fact I had not long split up from someone and was quite enjoying the attention. Also, he was a student, so I didn't want to upset him. And also, I did find him vaguely attractive in a very inexplicable way. Anyway, I reminded him, Don't you have a living girlfriend? It's complicated, came the predictable reply. However, I was, for once, very well behaved, and none of my messages could have been construed as anything more than friendship, and possibly at the very worst a mild flirting. This went on for a couple of weeks until one evening we were in the middle of a messenger conversation and he abruptly disappeared. This was unusual for him to go without a farewell, so I suppose I sort of knew that something was wrong. The next day he was due in for class, and then early in the morning I realised I had a message from a woman that I did not know. Guess who? Yes, Jacob's partner. Well, it was obvious from the message that she thought that something was going on between us. I was told in no uncertain terms that I should be ashamed of myself for breaching the teacher-student barrier. For God's sake, he was more 50 than 15. She made it sound as if, I'd been taking advantage of a teenager. Also, was I aware that he had already cheated on her with at least 2 of her friends, one of which was staying at their house, and so he'd done it in their own home? Well, no, I was not aware of that. But then he was not my partner, so why should I? Why should I be? And if she was aware of it, why was she even still with him? I put these questions to her in a very diplomatic manner, and to be fair, she did apologise to me. Apparently, she had caught him messaging me the night before, and she had jumped to the wrong conclusion, presumably based on his previous form. After a brief messenger conversation, she even referred to me as an angel. Well, I'm definitely not one of those, but in this particular case, I was innocent of all charges. She then proceeded to share her thoughts and experiences with him publicly on Facebook. So I was very happy that I had resisted that temptation, and I felt very lucky not to have been dragged any more into it. It then transpired that besides the previous affairs and trying to start an affair with me, he was also already having an affair with another woman. So I think I was more of a smokescreen for him. I did tell him what I thought of him, and perhaps predictably, he did not come for any more Spanish classes, which is a shame because I did quite like him really. So anyway, that was the one time I really did get hung for a sheep when I was for once actually a lamb. Chapter 32, Melanie the Troll. Melanie Latrol. So this Melanie, and I've used her real name in this because she doesn't deserve to have a name changed. Melanie was my first ever troll, the only troll I have ever had until I started doing the YouTube channel about true crime, etc. Literally took me completely by surprise. I've never been trolled by a student before her. So for once with this person, I'm using their real name, if in fact it is their real name, because I know that she uses several names on social media. I don't feel the need to protect her identity, as she's a really nasty person, as you will see. So the internet age has brought many positive benefits to my little school. Previously, newspaper advertising was the only way to get your name out there in the area, and it was quite expensive. So uninterested students would contact by telephone only, which is a rarity these days. It's like these days the phone rings, you're like, oh, who's that? Because your landline, you just don't use it, do you? If the phone rings now, we all look at each other like, who the hell is that ringing on there? So these days, Facebook is my most effective advertising medium. And inquiries come in the most part through Messenger, email, or even WhatsApp. Very few telephone calls, more WhatsApp now, to be honest. I also, thanks to the internet searches for Spanish classes, receive enquiries from many different nationalities. I can advertise my books for sale all over Spain and even the world, along with my YouTube channel. These are the positives. The negative is that once you put yourself out there into the public spectrum, you have to accept that not everyone thinks you're great. People make comments. 99% of the time, the comments are positive, but you always remember the 1%, unfortunately. I have come to realize that famous people must need to be very mentally strong, or more likely have someone else to deal with their social media for them. If my little modest experience with internet is anything to go by, I have learnt that some people are just plain nasty. And I have also learned hide, remove, block are the best ways of dealing with them. Engagement is just not advisable, makes it worse. Melanie was something else. In Melanie, I found my first real troll, someone who really seemed to have a personal grudge against me, that made a concerted effort over time to make my life difficult. Why? I have no idea why, but this is the story. Melanie contacted me regarding classes by email, saying that she had done some Spanish classes before and she was interested in an intensive course. As she was a CELTA qualified teacher, take notice of this, it will come up again, she felt she could progress quite quickly. I explained to her how the classes worked. Small groups, students working individually within the group, and eventually her husband emailed me to book her in. Maybe I should have known something when at first he was reluctant to do so, saying he didn't want to be scammed. In my experience, trolls use a lot of this emotive language, scam, scum, low life, etc. And it did seem a bit of a strange thing to say. He then sent me all his credit card details by email, as he seemed to have problems using the online facility to pay, and he asked me to do it. So he's gone from worrying about being scammed to just giving me all his details. Luckily for him, I am not scum and I don't scam. So along came Melanie on her first day, and she seemed pleasant enough. She signed her enrolment form, she settled into the class. The only real problems that first day were that her phone rang and pinged incessantly, and she said she didn't know how to silence it. In the end, another student in the class, a younger girl, did it for her. Also, every 15 minutes, she was going outside to smoke a cigarette, and she was doing the same work as two of the other students, and we had to wait for her to come back before we could carry on. But it was okay because she was a CELTA trained teacher and she could easily catch up. Another problem was at that first day at 12 o'clock, she started packing up, even though the class actually continues till 1 o'clock. She seemed surprised, though I don't know why, as every email that I sent her, which were many, it explained what the timetable was. Anyway, in general, the first morning passed okay, and she seemed happy and looking forward to the next class. Her husband, who incidentally was also a CELTA trained teacher, came to pick her up, and that was it for day one. Day two did not go well. Her fag breaks got longer, and I couldn't keep the other students waiting, as they did not smoke and they were progressing well and quickly through the work. So after about her fourth cigarette break in an hour, I gently suggested, could I move on with the other students and then she could just carry on at her own pace. Also, as the other students was picking things up more quickly, I didn't want her to feel under pressure to keep up with them all the time. But it wasn't fair to make them wait. Oh dear. She proceeded to tell me that my method was rubbish And she was a CELTA trained teacher, she knew that you could not have different levels in the same class. Anyway, before I knew it, she'd packed up her stuff and left to have another cigarette outside while her CELTA trained husband came to pick her up. That class was so much nicer after she left. That evening, I received an email asking for her money back. I pointed out to her that on both the website and the enrolment form that she had signed, it states clearly that money is not refundable. She could convert to private classes or an e-course, an online course if she liked. I began to realise that Melanie liked to drink before writing these emails, as they grew gradually more ridiculous. I looked for her on Facebook with the intention of blocking her, as I had a feeling she would be trouble. I couldn't find her anywhere on there. I now realise why, as not only she was using a slightly different name, her profile picture must have been at least 30 years old, photoshopped, or not her at all. The next news from Melanie was that she asked to come and sign the complaints book. As in Spain, everyone has the right to do that who is not happy with their product or service. Along she duly came with her husband, 2 CELTA trained teachers together, and she completed it in English because she couldn't speak Spanish, so that wasn't going to go anywhere, and took off her copy and left me with my copy. I knew they had absolutely no idea what to do with it then, and obviously I wasn't going to help them on that. A couple of weeks later, I got an email from PayPal, with whom I manage my online payment facility. They had opened a dispute and frozen her pet Mr. Kari's, her husband's payment, as he had sent them a written complaint that went something like this. I paid for the course in advance, and when I got there on the day it was due to start, there was no course. I feel I have been scammed. Liars. This is where I did make a mistake. I tried to deal with the dispute by email, sending the enrolment form and attendance sheet to PayPal to prove that the course had started, and also stating that the other students on the course had offered to provide evidence that Melanie had started the course and what had happened. I've learnt from this that PayPal email section just wants the proof of postage on an item. If it is a service, you need to speak to a person. I think it must be an electronic service by email, and it doesn't look into more specific or complicated cases. So because it wasn't a thing where I've sent something to them and I couldn't provide a post office proof that this item had been sent, the dispute was found in his favour, and I was furious that they actually gave him his money back. However, I then called PayPal, which I should have done from the beginning. When I heard that this had happened, I actually got through to them on the phone. I spoke directly to an agent. It took a little while to get through, but when I did, the agent, she was really understanding, and I explained the whole situation to her. She was very apologetic, and within 10 minutes, that money was back in my account. I have had an account with PayPal for probably 20 years, and I've never had a problem before. Unfortunately, it was too late to take it back from Mr. Carey, so in fact, it was PayPal that lost out. He got his money back, I got my money back, and PayPal ended up losing one payment, I suppose. So imagine that. 2 CELTA trained teachers had in fact scammed PayPal. I also found out that Melanie had been on Amazon and rated my books with only 1 star and the comment dreadful, even though she's never bought any of my books. Such a lovely woman, probably something to do on another drunken evening in her sad life. The whole experience was upsetting and awful, but as time passed, I just chalked it down to experience. This had never happened to me before, and I hoped it would never happen to me again. That someone would actually search out ways of getting to me like the Amazon thing was just awful. I know you can't please all the people all the time, but I just presumed that was the end of it. A whole year passed, and she faded into a distant memory. 99.9% of my students are lovely, so I don't get, you could just get this one horrible one and it does sort of affect you. One Sunday morning, I woke up to messages from several people I knew on Facebook, on Messenger, telling me to look on a local shaming Facebook site. So, they have these name and shame groups. I wasn't even a member of any of them. I hate those kind of things. But I joined the group to investigate because it was a private group and you had to be a member. But the post had been removed. Luckily, one of my friends, one of my ex-students actually, had screenshot it and she sent me a screenshot. It was a post from someone called Melanie Jane, and it went something like this. Be careful of Vicki Riley, Spanish teacher in San Miguel. As a CELTA-trained teacher myself, I found her teaching methods very strange. After a bit of nastiness, I received a full refund. Girl, I was fuming. I posted an answer tagging her in it. I explained exactly what had happened and I questioned who in fact is the scammer. As I say, no wonder I hadn't been able to find her on Facebook because not only the name was different, I had known her as Melanie Torres and Melanie Carey, but the photo was so different from what she actually looks like, a mid to late 50s age woman, that it was either photoshopped or in fact a photo of her daughter or someone else entirely. Anyway, I was heartened by the messages of support I received. Melanie had not endeared herself to the other members of the site with a previous comment she had made saying, this area is full of scammers from the north of England. Bit of a sweeping statement, Melanie. How to make friends and influence people. Well, later that day, she obviously recovered from the morning's hangover. I am convinced that her nasty posts are a result of too much alcohol. I am now blocked, and I have blocked her in return. Maybe in some parallel Facebook universe, she's still saying nasty things about me. Who knows? I just think it's a strange way for a CELTA-trained teacher to behave. Melanie Jane, Torres, Carey, or whatever your name really is, if you are reading this, firstly, actually, why are you still trolling? Remember that karma is a bitch. I feel sorry for anyone that can hold a grudge for so long, despite the fact that they scammed their money back and can always be happy in the fact that they are a CELTA-trained teacher. Thank you. See you next time.